Welcome to Nightmare Fuel Stories, the beacon I never wanted to be a lighthouse keeper. The isolation, the responsibility, the unending vigilance, it wasn't for me. But when life crashes down around you like mine did, you take whatever port appears in the storm. After Sarah left, taking what remained of my dignity and most of our shared assets, I needed somewhere to disappear. The Blackrock Lighthouse position appeared in my job search like divine intervention. 6 months alone on a rocky outcrop 10 miles off the Maine coast, with only the occasional supply boat and radio check-ins for company. Perfect for a man trying to forget his name, his past, and the crushing weight of failure. You understand this is somewhat unusual, the Coast Guard administrator had said during my interview, peering at me over horn-rimmed glasses. Most lighthouses are automated now. Blackrock is different. Different how? I'd asked. Historical designation. They want to preserve its original operation. Plus the automation equipment never seems to function properly there. She shuffled papers, avoiding my eyes. The last keeper left rather suddenly. Personal reasons. I should have asked more questions. I should have wondered why they were willing to hire someone with no experience beyond a weekend training course. I should have paid attention to the hesitation in her voice when she described my duties, but I didn't. On a gray October morning, I watched the supply boat pull away from the small dock at the base of the rocky island, leaving me alone with the towering white lighthouse, the keeper's quarters attached to its base, and the incessant crash of waves against jagged stone. The lighthouse rose 70 feet above the rocky outcrop, its beacon visible for 20 miles on clear nights. The keeper's quarters were Spartan but comfortable enough: a small kitchen, a living area with a desk for logs and records, a bedroom, and a bathroom. The previous keeper had left everything immaculate, which struck me as odd given his sudden departure. No personal items remained, just government-issue furniture and equipment, all meticulously maintained. The lighthouse itself was a marvel of 19th-century engineering, with a spiral staircase winding up to the lantern room. The massive Fresnel lens at the top was a beautiful piece of craftsmanship, with hundreds of prisms arranged to magnify and direct the light out to sea. My primary duty was to ensure this light remained operational from sunset to sunrise, every single day. My first week passed uneventfully. I established a routine. Maintenance checks in the morning, cleaning and polishing the lens, checking the weather, recording ships that passed within visual range, and then lighting the beacon as dusk fell. The radio crackled with routine communications, weather reports, occasional check-ins from the Coast Guard station in Portland, and distant conversations between passing vessels. It was during my second week that I first noticed something strange. I was in the lantern room just after sunset, having lit the beacon for the night. As I gazed out at the darkening ocean, I spotted a ship on the horizon. This wasn't unusual. Commercial fishing vessels and cargo ships frequently passed by these waters, but something about this particular vessel caught my attention. It was an old sailing ship, the kind you might see in a maritime museum or historical reenactment. 3 masts, full sails despite the calm evening, moving at a speed that seemed impossible without stronger winds. I grabbed the binoculars kept in the lantern room and focused on the ship. The vessel was weathered, its wooden hull darkened with age. No running lights were visible, which violated maritime law. As I watched, it changed course slightly, heading directly toward the lighthouse. I felt a chill run down my spine that had nothing to do with the October air. Something was wrong with that ship, wrong in a way I couldn't articulate. I hurried down to the radio room and hailed the Coast Guard. Portland Station, this is Blackrock Lighthouse. I'm observing an unidentified sailing vessel approaching my position. No running lights visible. Appears to be a historical vessel. Over. After a moment of static, a response came through. Blackrock, this is Portland. Can you provide coordinates and description? Over. I relayed the ship's apparent position and described what I was seeing. There was a long pause before Portland responded again. Blackrock, we show no vessels in that area on radar. Are you certain of what you're seeing? Over. I rushed back up to the lantern room with the portable radio. The ship was closer now, perhaps 2 miles offshore. I could make out more details: tattered sails, a weathered figurehead at the bow, and still no sign of crew on deck. Portland, I'm looking at it right now. Large sailing vessel, 3-masted, heading directly toward Blackrock. How can it not be on your radar? Over. Stand by, Blackrock. I kept my eyes fixed on the approaching ship. It was moving too fast for a sailing vessel in these conditions, cutting through the water as if propelled by engines rather than wind. Yet I could clearly see its billowing sails. As it drew nearer, perhaps a mile out now, I noticed something else. The hull appeared to be wrong. In places, it seemed transparent, as if I could see through it to the water beyond. The radio crackled again. Blackrock, we're dispatching a patrol boat to your location. ETA 3 hours. Continue to monitor the vessel, but do not attempt to make contact. Over. Portland, what is this thing? Over, there was a pause before the response came. Just maintain your position, BlackRock, over and out. I kept watching as the strange ship approached. Half a mile out now, it suddenly changed course, beginning to circle the lighthouse island at a distance. I could see the name painted on its stern now, Lady Eliza. Something about that name tugged at my memory, but I couldn't place it. For hours, the ship circled BlackRock, never approaching closer than half a mile, never showing any sign of crew. When the Coast Guard patrol boat finally arrived shortly after midnight, the Lady Eliza had vanished. One moment it was there, silhouetted against the moonlit water, the next, it had simply ceased to exist. The patrol boat crew searched the area but found nothing. The officer in charge, Lieutenant Mercer, came ashore to speak with me. "First time seeing one?" he asked, refusing coffee as we sat in the keeper's quarters. "One what?" He studied me for a moment. "They didn't tell you about BlackRock's reputation, did they?" "They mentioned automation problems," I said. "Nothing about ghost ships," Mercer sighed. "It's not in the official briefing. Bad for recruitment, but BlackRock has a history of unusual sightings, ships that shouldn't be there, vessels that disappeared decades or even centuries ago." "That's ridiculous," I said, though the image of the Lady Eliza's semi-transparent hull flashed in my mind. "The Lady Eliza," Mercer continued, ignoring my comment, "was a merchant vessel that went down in a storm near here in 1887. 38 souls lost. She's been spotted by BlackRock keepers at least a dozen times since then." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the drafty keeper's quarters. "Why here, why BlackRock?" Mercer shrugged. "Some say it's because the original lighthouse failed that night. The light went out during the storm and several ships wrecked on the rocks. The Lady Eliza was just one of them." "Failed how?" I asked. "The keeper at the time claimed something interfered with the light, something that wanted the ships to crash." Mercer stood up. "Look, it's just local legend. The important thing is to maintain the light. That's your job, keep the light burning no matter what you see or hear. Can you do that?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "Good," he said. "We'll file a report about tonight. Standard procedure. Try to get some sleep." After Mercer left, I couldn't bring myself to go to bed. Instead, I climbed back up to the lantern room and stared out at the now empty sea. The massive Fresnel lens rotated slowly, sending its protective beam out into the darkness. I found myself wondering how many eyes, living or otherwise, might be watching that light, depending on it. Days passed without further incident. I mentioned the Lady Eliza in my daily log, but tried to convince myself it had been a hallucination, a product of isolation and stress. Perhaps I'd seen a real ship and my mind had distorted it somehow. The rational explanations I created became less convincing each time I repeated them. Then came the night of the storm. It was my 4th week at BlackRock. A nor'easter had been predicted, but the ferocity of the storm exceeded forecasts. Wind howled around the lighthouse, driving rain against the windows with such force I feared the glass might shatter. Waves crashed against the rocky base of the island, sending spray high enough to reach the lantern room 70 feet up. I had just finished my evening inspection of the light when the beam suddenly flickered and went out. Panic seized me. The backup generator should have kicked in automatically, but the lantern room remained dark except for flashes of lightning. I grabbed a flashlight and checked the mechanisms. Everything appeared to be in working order, fuel lines intact, electrical connections secure, yet the light remained stubbornly dark. As I worked frantically to restore the beacon, a particularly violent lightning flash illuminated the sea outside. In that brief moment of visibility, I saw them, not one ship but many. A dozen vessels of various sizes and eras, all circling BlackRock in a slow, deliberate pattern. Sailing ships like the Lady Eliza, steam-powered vessels from the early 20th century, even what appeared to be a modern fishing trawler with its lights extinguished. The sight paralyzed me with terror. These phantom ships moved with purpose, tightening their circle around the lighthouse with each passing minute. And now I could see figures on their decks, shadowy forms that didn't move like living people, jerking and swaying as if suspended from invisible strings. Another lightning flash, and I saw faces, pale, bloated faces pressed against the glass of the lantern room, staring in at me with dead eyes and gaping mouths. Water streamed from their hair and clothing, and their skin had the gray-green pallor of bodies long submerged. I screamed and stumbled backward, nearly falling down the spiral staircase. The faces vanished with the lightning, but I could feel their presence still, just beyond the glass, waiting. The radio in my pocket crackled to life. "BlackRock, this is Portland. Your light is out. Repeat, your beacon is not visible. Please respond." With trembling hands, I raised the radio. "Portland, this is BlackRock. I'm experiencing a malfunction, working to restore the light now. Be advised, I'm also seeing," I hesitated, knowing how it would sound, "I'm seeing multiple vessels surrounding the lighthouse, possible vessels in distress." "Say again, BlackRock, your transmission is breaking up." Another lightning flash. The The faces were back, more of them now, pressed against every window of the lantern room, mouths moving, saying something I couldn't hear over the storm. Portland, there are ships out there, and people outside the lighthouse. They're trying to get in. Static was my only answer. The storm must have been interfering with communications. I turned my attention back to the light. Whatever was happening, my primary responsibility was to get that beacon working again. Ships, real ships with living crews, could be out in this storm, depending on BlackRock's light to guide them away from the dangerous rocks. As I checked the mechanisms again, I heard a new sound beneath the howling wind, a slow, deliberate knocking. Not from the lantern room windows, but from below. Someone or something was at the door of the keeper's quarters. I tried to ignore it, focusing on the task at hand. The primary light mechanism seemed undamaged, yet it refused to function. The backup system similarly failed to respond. It was as if something was actively preventing the light from working. The knocking grew louder, more insistent. Then came voices, faint at first, then growing in volume until they were nearly as loud as the storm itself. Dozens of voices calling out in various languages and accents, all with the same message. Let us in. We're cold. We've been at sea so long. The light was out. Why was the light out? Let us in, keeper. I backed away from the lantern room windows, heart pounding in my chest. The voices were coming from everywhere now, outside the windows, from the stairwell below, even seeming to emanate from the walls themselves. A particularly loud knock made me jump. It had come from directly behind me, from the glass of the lantern room. I turned slowly to face it. A man stood on the other side of the glass, impossible given the height and the sheer drop beyond. He wore the uniform of a 19th-century ship's captain, soaked through and hanging in tatters from his emaciated frame. His face was partially decomposed, one eye missing, the other fixed on me with terrible intensity. "You must let the light fail," he said, his voice somehow clear despite the barrier between us. "They need to join us, all of them." "Who?" I managed to ask, my voice a terrified whisper. "The ships," he replied, gesturing to the storm-tossed sea beyond. "So many ships out there, so many souls to welcome." I looked past him and saw, illuminated by another lightning flash, a massive container ship struggling against the waves, dangerously close to the rocks surrounding BlackRock. "No," I said, finding strength in the sight of living people in danger. "I won't let you do this." The captain's remaining eye narrowed. We didn't have a choice. Why should they? I turned away from him and attacked the light mechanism with renewed determination. Something was physically preventing the ignition system from working, a presence I could feel but not see, like a hand holding the switches in the off position. "Get out," I growled, pushing against the invisible resistance. "This is my lighthouse." My light, the pressure increased, and the knocking from below grew louder. The voices rose to a fevered pitch, no longer pleading but demanding, threatening. "You belong with us, keeper. The light must fail. Join us in the deep." With a final, desperate effort, I forced the switch to the on position. For a moment nothing happened. Then, with a sound like a gasping breath, the massive beam flared to life, rotating slowly to send its protective light out to the storm-tossed sea. The effect was immediate. The voices screamed in unison, a sound of rage and anguish that cut through the storm like a physical force. The captain outside the window contorted in fury, his form seeming to dissolve in the beacon's light. "They'll never let you leave now," he snarled as he faded. "You've chosen your side, keeper." The knocking stopped. The voices fell silent. Outside, I could see the container ship adjusting its course, moving away from the treacherous rocks. The phantom vessels that had surrounded BlackRock were gone, dispersed by the light, or simply vanished back to whatever realm they inhabited. I maintained my position in the lantern room all night, afraid to leave the light unattended even for a moment. When dawn finally broke and the storm began to subside, I shut down the beacon and collapsed into a chair, exhausted beyond measure. The radio crackled to life. "BlackRock, this is Portland. Do you copy?" "We lost contact during the storm." I picked up the radio with a shaking hand. "Portland, this is BlackRock. I'm here. We show your light was out for approximately 12 minutes last night before being restored." "Can you confirm?" "Confirmed," I said. "Technical malfunction. I managed to repair it." There was a pause before Portland responded. "Good work, keeper. The container ship Maersk Defender reported your light guided them through the worst of the storm. You may have saved a lot of lives last night." I didn't respond immediately, looking out at the now calm sea where phantom ships had circled just hours before. "BlackRock, do you copy?" "I copy, Portland." "Just doing my job. We're sending out the regular supply boat tomorrow, weather permitting. Do you need anything urgent?" I thought about asking for a replacement, for someone to take over so I could leave this haunted place. But the captain's final words echoed in my mind. "They'll never let you leave now." "No," I said finally, "nothing urgent." After signing off, I made my way down to the keeper's quarters. Everything was as I had left it, with no sign of the spectral visitors from the night before. But as I passed the desk where the lighthouse logs were kept, something caught my eye. The logbook was open, though I was certain I had closed it. And there, in handwriting not my own, was a new entry. October 29. The keeper attempted to interfere. He will learn. The light must fail when we call. The sea demands its due. Below this ominous message was a list of dates, some past, some future. With growing horror, I realized they corresponded to major storms predicted for the region. The next date was just 2 weeks away. I should leave, pack my things, radio for emergency extraction, flee this haunted lighthouse, and never look back. But as I stared at those dates, I understood the terrible truth. If I leave, the next keeper might not fight as I did. They might not understand what's at stake. Or worse, they might be overcome by the malevolent presence that wants the light to fail. The light is my responsibility now, not just to guide ships safely past Blackrock's treacherous shores, but to keep at bay whatever dwells in the deep, calling to the drowned and demanding more souls to join them. I've started preparing for the next storm. Salt lines at every door and window, protective symbols I found in old books left by previous keepers hidden in a locked cabinet, backup systems for the backup systems. I will not let the light fail again. But at night, when the beacon sweeps its protective arc across the black water, I sometimes see them waiting just beyond its reach, the ships that shouldn't exist, their crews of the drowned watching Blackrock with patient malice. They have all the time in the world, and sometimes in the keeper's quarters I hear faint knocking, gentle now, almost friendly. "Let us in," they whisper. "It's so cold out here, so lonely. Don't you get lonely too, keeper?" I do. God help me, I do. And sometimes on the darkest nights I find myself wondering what would happen if I just opened the door, just a crack, just to see their faces clearly, to speak with someone, anyone, after months of solitude. The supply boat comes less frequently now. Radio communications grow more sporadic. Portland seems to be forgetting about Blackrock and its keeper, or perhaps they know what happens to those who stay too long and have simply written me off as already lost. But the light continues to burn night after night. I continue my vigil, fighting the growing temptation to join those who circle my rocky prison. They're becoming familiar to me now. The captain with his missing eye, the young sailor with the crushed skull, the modern fisherman with nets still tangled around his bloated limbs. They call to me by name now. Tomorrow brings another storm, another date from their list. I've checked and rechecked the beacon, reinforced my protections, prepared myself for their assault. I will keep the light burning. But sometimes, in moments of terrible honesty, I wonder how long I can resist. How long before I become just another face pressed against the glass, another voice calling out to the next keeper of Blackrock light. After all, the sea demands its due, and I've denied it for so long. The storm is coming, the light must not fail. I am the keeper for now.